The cable TV guy was like, "Fuck it, we'll do it live."
Yep. We'll just do it live. But yeah, we have like a few minutes. We can definitely chit chat about all the other things
Sure.
besides the main topic at hand. Sorry, what were you gonna ask?
Oh, no, I don't remember. So clearly it was very important.
Yeah. Yeah. But how are you doing, man?
No complaints.
Yeah.
Just time moves faster than I would like it to, but what can you do?
It's because you're getting older. I remember like time
Yes.
used to be so slow. I was
And
like,
I have a
why am
2-year
I?
old, and
Oh
that
wow.
makes life go very fast.
Yeah. Do you still stream a lot on YouTube or make
No,
YouTube
I
videos?
quit all that stuff in September.
Okay. What's the difference in workday like between going full time on YouTube versus now?
Well, I've never been full time on YouTube. I've always done, other stuff. I mean, I've done sort of product stuff the entire time that I was on YouTube. That was never my full time job. I made a lot of money from it, but it wasn't like my full time job. So my day to day now is like, I mean, I just I work the same amount. I just allocate it to different things.
Cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was
I
good to me. I mean, I like it. I spend my time now working with, aside from our company, where I do all the product stuff, I just spend my time working with entrepreneurs, helping them. My job, I like to say, is make the good line go up and make the bad line go down, especially make the good line go up. And I like working with entrepreneurs, so it's awesome.
That's cool because I always assumed that you were doing YouTube full time because you were so big and successful on it.
I mean, I basically did two full-time jobs, which is hard, but I deliberately did that because I didn't want my product skills to get soft. Because I knew if I did YouTube full time for years and years and years, like you take years off of something like product and you're gonna be way behind, and I didn't want that to happen. So I deliberately kept doing it, even though like financially I didn't really need to. I didn't ever want to be a YouTuber per se. That's just a side quest that I did that happened to get more popular than I expected it to be. And so I kept doing all the product stuff specifically so that I wouldn't, like my skills there wouldn't atrophy.
That makes sense. I feel like I'm in that boat almost. It's been 3 years since I did full time product design, and now I'm
Yeah.
getting a
And I
little bit
mean,
worried.
I think it's really cool that you've sort of talked about that so transparently because I mean, it is a real thing that when you get to be senior in anything, and I know in your case, you've sort of been doing like recruiting more, but like once you get, as they used to say, off the boards, with design, it's like you can lose your fastball a lot more quickly than you thought you would. And like you still remember the fundamentals, of course, but those little day-to-day details, you're like, how do I like, where's the button for this? You just like, how do I make a box?
I opened up Figma for the first time in a while, and they changed their user interface
Yeah,
completely, and I'm just like, what the fuck?
right.
I'm out of my depth at this point.
Yeah, and you'll pick it up, but it is you do feel that atrophy and it sucks.
Yeah, yeah, it does. So that's gonna be my next mission. But anyway, I think we're at time now. So it's 12 o'clock Eastern time. We've been live for a few minutes just shooting this shit. But everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where you are. I'm with Finn McCanty here today, and this is gonna be a really awesome show because I've been a big fan of Finn's content on LinkedIn. I actually didn't know about you on YouTube until you went on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
who is this dude? And I looked you up on YouTube. I'm like, oh, okay, okay. He might know what he's talking about. He's got
yeah,
a pretty big audience there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, folks, if you're just joining us, let us know where you're based. If you have any questions, I don't think we're gonna have a huge crowd today. So any question you have will come up in the chats, and we'll just talk about it. This is pretty casual. I don't have any set agenda, but Finn, I definitely want the audience to get to know you a little bit more like, what I know about you from my perception on LinkedIn. So, what you been up to lately? What were you doing before? Like,
Hmm.
what your background is like?
Well, like you said, most people probably know me from YouTube. I had a couple channels there. I quit doing it in September, but I had a couple channels there that I did for about 7 years, which had a combined total of 750,000 subscribers and I think about 130 million views or something like that, which is, a lot of people know my face from that. But as we were talking about before, I would consider myself a product person first and foremost, which is what I've spent my entire career doing. I started out doing this in like 98, 99, something like that. Building, designing and building and marketing products, to me, and we'll get into this, but to me, like, I don't really draw a distinction between those things. Like, there's basically three jobs to be done, which is like, what should we make? How do we get it made? And how do we get people to buy it? Are sort of the three things. And to me, like, my job is any and all of those three things, which I think is one of the big shifts here that we're talking about, sort of with the AI thing. But I started out kind of in the agency world, did some stuff, talked my way into doing some stuff for like Nike and Nintendo and Red Bull at an agency back in the day. I did very bad work for them. I'm sorry. I apologize to our, our clients, but I got my foot in the door. Then after that, I worked at another agency doing a lot of stuff for, so like in New York, doing stuff for a bunch of financial companies that don't exist anymore, like Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and stuff like that. And then worked at a different agency doing industrial design and engineering. I mean, I didn't do the engineering, but we did this industrial design and engineering. Primarily worked on Procter and Gamble stuff like Tide, Febreze, Bounce, Swiffer. As far as I know, all the Febreze or all the Swiffer products that are in stores now, as far as I know, are still our designs. So that's pretty cool. And like just working on stuff at that scale, especially like physical product at that scale, is insane when they're selling like hundreds of millions of units of these things a year all over the world. After that, I did design and marketing, two separate roles. At Abercrombie and Fitch, when we were sort of on top of the world, I did designed girls' t-shirts for Hollister, and then moved into a marketing role after that. Then I went to a startup called Creative Live that is like education for creative people, like photographers and designers, people like that. Some people watching may have seen that. Then I started doing YouTube and what I do now, which is I'm a partner in a company called URM Academy that does online education for music producers. So we like teach you how to mix music, and I do all the product management and product design for us. We're a very small team. The product team is like two people. It's me and our engineer, but I'm very proud of like what we have been able to ship with such a tiny team. And I think the way that we work, that Tarek is our engineer's name, the way that Tarek and I work, I think is very representative of how product teams will and need to work in the future with some of the tooling that we're going to talk about.
That's really cool. When you say design and marketing, I have so many questions around that
Yeah.
because design is such a all encapsulating term nowadays when it comes to like digital, fashion, etc. So
Yep.
when you work
And they're
for
total,
Hollis,
yeah, they're very different. Yep.
so how would you define your expertise of design?
I would say that I would say that at this point, like, I'm an okay visual designer. I used to be good. I mean, this is a very common story, right? Like, I'm okay, but I used to be good. I think what I've realized is my strength is more around understanding. Like I'm very good at understanding human behavior. So I would say that my strength is figuring out like what needs to be built and sort of sketching that out at a I guess you could say like UX kind of level.
Yeah.
I can do enough visual design that for us it's good enough. I would not want to be in my shoes right now shopping my portfolio around, given all the things that you talk about. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
um, I think a lot of people probably know how that feels.
Yeah, I
But I
mean
mean,
both.
I've shipped a lot of stuff for like, I mean, it's a very common thing for a lot of people. It's like I've shipped a lot of shit that was very successful for some like huge brands, built our own products and stuff. And so I feel very confident about that. My visual design skills, I would not want to be marketing myself as a designer right now. And I think there's a lot of people that are in that place.
So you're like a designer of everything, but the like the high-end visual stuff.
Yes.
And you also design t-shirts for Hollister and
Yes, which was interesting because that seems like it would be really easy because it's just like, something like this or like, Arch logo with like a,
yeah.
straight graphic, but it's like anything else. Like it seems like it would be easy to design whatever, like an account settings modal or something like that, but it's not, is really hard. Designing like just a graphic that says A and F on a t-shirt is actually fucking hard to design. In the same way as like a simple like modal can be very hard to design. So I also did like I started doing videos like 20 years ago. I was like did all the videos for like this action sports and music magazine called Flow that some people might have recognized from back in the day. And like to me, there's and this is very very relevant to sort of the AI thing is there's there's sort of a meta skill of understanding what the rules of engagement are for the product that you're working on.
Yeah.
And then there's the specific skill of being able to execute on those. And like I can learn anything. Like I will whatever. I'm a systems thinker, so I will learn the rule. I will figure out what the rules are and I can learn how to execute on them. The part that AI makes way faster is the executing part. Maybe it's not like perfect, but it's pretty good. So like if you have the skill of being able to understand the rules, like the sort of meta rule set, AI, you're going to be in a very good place to use these tools that will help you on the execution part way faster than if you had to sort of, brute force it the old way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's the warning that a lot of designers are giving out, especially the older designers. Not to, well, it sounds a little ageist, but I would say the more experienced and older designers are often saying that AI is supposed to flip the paradigm on its head.
Hmm.
And if you're super focused on UI or visual design and you're not really into systems thinking, research, strategy, etc., you're going to be displaced, even
Yep.
though the current market favors the visual designer super, super heavily.
You have made this is such a great point that you made. And it is a really tough spot for designers because it's exactly right. Like in the present moment, you should optimize for visual design. But in the very near future, that's the exact opposite of what you should optimize for. So it's a very tricky kind of balancing act right now.
Yeah, it's almost as if you should not be listening to the employer in terms of your long-term career success because they don't really care, right?
No,
Uh,
they sure don't. But you do have to. I mean, if you need a job today, like you have to listen to them.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's like figuring out your financial future and the bridge to get there. But
Yep.
oh, what's so cool is like we have people in the chat saying howdy. We have Isaac Parker saying howdy, Alex Gregory saying hey all, and Daniel St. George asked, did you work with Simon Coley or Colley?
Uh,
Colley.
I don't think so. Where at Abercrombie?
Uh, Daniel, you know, there's always a delay with this, and
Yeah.
we can't even see the chat in Riverside, unfortunately, even though other tools allow you to see it. I have to pull up my LinkedIn Live on a browser and then watching myself like maybe like 20 seconds
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah. It doesn't ring a bell, but I mean, Abercrombie is such a big company. It's possible he was there when I was, and I just didn't
Yeah,
remember or didn't see him.
yeah. Well,
But so I think, you were talking about this in your post the other day, which I think was very insightful. The challenge with all these AI products to me is there's two. One is the technical one of just figuring out how to use these tools, but I think that's pretty easy. I mean, designers are good at figuring out how, or should be at least good at adopting new tools. I've been doing this long enough that when I started, the tech stack was Photoshop and Notepad, and then Dreamweaver and Flash and Director and then Sketch and blah 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 blah. And like you can learn how to use a new tool. The AI ones, there's some quirks there about sort of learning to think, probabilistically and stuff like that, but you can figure that out. The bigger challenge, I think, is an organizational and process one because what they're doing is breaking down the silos that have existed for so long, whereas sort of the classic process would be that, the business, product managers or in sort of CPG world, like brand managers or merchants or whoever they are, figures out like what we're going to make. They decide that and then hand it over to designers who figure out what that's going to look like and how it's going to work. And then they hand that off to engineers who, get it done. And with these AI products, all of that kind of gets combined into one thing. And it kind of breaks that linear process in what in my opinion is a good thing. Like so what I was saying earlier is the way that Tarek and I work is like he's a full stack engineer, but I would say he has a very good kind of product sense. And in some ways I would say he's better at like UI stuff than I am in some ways. And so the way and I, I used to write code for a living, so like I pretty strong technically too. And so, our workflow is that whoever has the right idea, like we just pick it and do that. And there's no sort of pissing contests and territorial bullshit, but at big companies, like that's going to be really hard. Like what happens if a designer, comes up with a prototype that has like a legitimately cool feature that nobody thought of, but it's like obvious from looking at it, like shit, we should do that. Is the business going to sign off on that? Unlikely. I mean, and so like the way I look at this right now is that like in a fight they call this a scramble where like nobody really has control of the situation. People are like literally scrambling, and whoever can move fastest and get top position is basically in charge of the fight from this moment on. So I think we're in a little bit of a scramble right now where this question of like who decides like what we're going to make and sort of what that looks like at a high level is a little bit up for grabs. And what I don't want for designers is I don't want them to end up in what I would call sort of the role of being janitor, meaning that some PM or whoever, could be a marketing person, whatever, somebody, or fucking worse, like some sales exec or something like that, uses, Lovable or whatever fill in the blank AI product to make some kind of like janky half-ass prototype that gets signed off when no designers are in the room, and they're like, this is what we're going to do, can you clean it up? And then you've got to sort of pick up the pieces. That's what I don't want. And I think there's a very real risk of that happening. So how you sort of come out on top in that scramble, to me, is the question.
I feel like that was happening even before AI. Like you
For
have
sure.
salespeople and PMs who would mock up something, right?
Yes.
And they often would just come to you and say, "We have this really good idea from talking to this really, really big client who will sign this really big contract if you were to build this thing. So here's what
Yep.
we think this thing is going to be. Can you just kind of make it look pretty and so we can present it to the CEO, etc." So that's always been happening. I
For
feel like
sure, but I think
designers have been,
it's going to, like, what they're signing off on is going to be so much more like high fidelity that
yeah.
the room to push back will be even smaller. Because like, no,
So
we already did it. Like, why would you start over again? Like, what? No, it's done. Look, we just need you to like polish the details, right? Which is not, I think that's not the right way to look at it. But we all know that the higher fidelity something is, sort of the more persuasive it is as a shiny object for everybody to fall in love with,
yeah, for sure. And I feel like in smaller companies like you described, like your company, you have that higher agency
Yep.
where you can push ahead and say, this is a good idea, let me go for it. And then at larger companies, I think design is often pigeonholed in this area of
Yes.
lower power. What would you say, if you were a designer nowadays and AI is, our company is saying they're more AI first and people are just leveraging these tools like Cursor
Yep.
and Lovable to make whatever they want, and you're a designer and you feel like for example, PMs definitely have more power than most
Yep.
designers do. They're ranked higher. They're the overarching organization that manages design, right?
Yep.
And they're the ones who can push for this narrative. Like we don't need as many designers anymore. We don't need them to do this work because we can do it ourselves, right?
Yep.
Like that's not technically true, but because they're the louder voice or they have more power, they can actually push for this agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a designer in this environment. What do you do? Like, do you leave and try to do your own smaller agency or smaller teams? Like, how do you navigate that?
Well, if you want to stick around inside the company, so like I said, it's a scramble right now. And so there's essentially the question is, can PMs become designers faster than designers can become PMs? That's sort of the question. Um, and as long as I've been doing this, designers have wanted a seat at the table. They've always been saying like, we want to be involved higher upstream to be more strategic, to be making these decisions, blah blah blah, whatever version of that. And they've always been sort of unhappy that they've been struggled to do that. But now is the opportunity to make that happen. And I think there's two mindset shifts to sort of that I think will be key to that. Number one is at the macro level, understand that all companies exist to create shareholder value. That the end, period. That is their legal, like fiduciary responsibility of like the company management. They will get personally sued in theory. They can get personally sued if they do not deliver shareholder value. That is their job. So, when I hear, designers say things like that, we should put this be head of profit and blah blah blah. It's like, bro, you are just talking yourself out of a job right now, because like that's not, like, your job is to create shareholder value, all of us. And if you don't like that, that's your choice. But like, you have to understand that is your macro job. And then so on the one hand, like, understand that everything you do needs to be framed in the context of like, how are we creating shareholder value, make the line go up, typically revenue. Now in the micro, um, all the people, we're all cogs in this big machine, and the machine's job is to create shareholder value. But all of the so in theory, that's what we're all here to do. But in reality, each one of those cogs is really a self-interested person that's out to maximize their own economic value. So there's sort of this, which is what PMs do, is this um, soft skill of convincing other people that what you want to do is in their best interest. And I think this is a very big weakness for a lot of designers, because a lot of them can be very like idealistic and kind of stubborn and put their foot down and be like, no, this is the right thing to do. And it's like, well, if you don't have leverage, people are just going to go around you or walk over you. So learning how to be a deal maker and this like stakeholder management thing of convincing other people that what you think is right is in their best interest is probably the real key to like coming out on top in this scramble. And PMs are good at this because this is literally their job. That's all they do, is just like horse trading with different, okay, engineering says we can't do this, but say blah, 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 blah. It's just, that's all, I mean, that's what I do all day, is like horse trading of making everyone happy. So if you want to stick around inside the company, I think those, forget about the learning how to use the tools is easy. You can do that. Don't like, that's easy. It's making those two mindset shifts, in particular the horse trading piece of like, how are you going to like politically outmaneuver the PM so that you come on top in this scramble? Like, that's the challenge right now. And I know that's not a thing that a lot of designers enjoy, but if you choose not to play that game, it's very likely that you're going to end up in this janitor role of having to clean up their shit. They're going to give you a fucked up, lovable prototype and be like, cool, it's done. Put it into our design system. And even that is not going to be a job for that long, because they're going to, you'll integrate the design system. It's going to fucking do that too. So if you don't want to play that game, that's a tough place to be. So then option number two is, like you said, to exit. And there's a lot of different ways that that could look. And that sort of depends on your own life circumstances. If you're 23 and single, that's one thing. If, you're 40 and you have two kids, that's another. But I think, that's kind of the choice you have, is like, either, play the political game to ensure that you come out on the right side of this transition if you want to stick around inside a larger company, or change your situation such that you're in an environment where you have more agency. What do you think?
I agree with you altogether. I think what's upsetting for me as a designer is that we've often been taught about how design goes beyond that. Like, design could be emotional. It's not just about the shareholder value. And when we talk about shareholder value, there's a certain amount of cynicism within it, because we know that it's a very flawed system, right? We talk about shareholder primacy. We talk about how capitalism actually makes people's lives worse.
But
And
they write your paycheck. And the
they
golden rule is the one with the gold makes the rules.
Sure, but I feel like design should go a little bit beyond that. And you do see a few really successful designers who go beyond that. Like, I don't think Johnny Ive talks about shareholder value. I don't think he
I
really.
guarantee you that he is a fucking absolute cutthroat motherfucker behind the scenes. I guarantee you he is one of the best fucking horse traders on the planet. I'm sure
I
of it.
don't believe that. I don't believe that because he worked successfully with Steve Jobs.
Even that of like, he aligned himself with Steve Jobs, who is absolutely that completely ruthless person. So even the
he's
fact that he aligned himself as the sort of the golden child behind one of the most ruthless people ever in business is a very smart move.
I can see Steve Jobs being ruthless,
Oh,
but
he
I
for sure
never
is
see him
was.
as somebody who pinches pennies or I don't, it doesn't
No,
seem
but
like somebody.
he will make you work on Christmas and miss your family.
Sure, Sure, but he's not going to tie certain design decisions to how much money something would potentially make. He always
Right.
approached it from, this is we're building really amazing products and everything else will take care of itself, right? Like all the stories like in the movies, in the books with I forgot
Well,
which.
remember he also almost ruined Apple by thinking this way.
Yeah, I
That's why
mean,
he got
he
fired.
he got fired, he got removed by the
Yeah.
board, but I forgot what the Lisa 2 or whichever computer
Yeah.
that was just a complete catastrophe from a financial standpoint because he just wanted the best for everything, and it was not competitive on the market. And I mean, obviously that didn't work, but later on, it felt like he somehow found the magic formula,
Well,
and it was
hey,
just
if you have Steve Jobs level product sense and you can do that, then you should.
yeah.
Most of us don't. So I'm a realist, and like I understand everything you're saying. I totally get it, and it's up to each of us sort of where we want to fall on that idealism versus realism spectrum. And again, depends on your life circumstances. If you're 23 and you have no dependents, then maybe that's a hill you're willing to die on. That's up to all of us to decide. I wouldn't, but I mean, I wouldn't, but that's just me.
I think as a designer, you need a little bit of both. You can't just be a complete mercenary. Like that's so joyless as a designer. Like you're basically a growth designer. Then you're just like, how do I squeeze every ounce of profit out of our users in every which way possible,
Well, which
regardless.
generally speaking means making a great product that they love. Generally, like there's some times where that's not always true, but generally speaking, it's aligned. There's a few, yeah, I mean, there's very few examples where that's not true, but I mean, this is all a choice. I mean, I would say like I've just seen so many designers who are really unhappy people because of this sort of they are working in a machine that they hate. And like that's not a healthy situation. And so you have two choices there. You can either change the way you see things or you can change the situation. But to sort of stick around in this situation where you're just deeply unhappy with the fundamental nature of the machine in which you operate, to me, like that's not healthy, and I don't think it's sustainable. I know
Yeah,
a lot of miserable designers who are in that exact situation.
that's true. That's me included. But let's talk about something more tactical because
Yeah.
I think you're bringing up a good point in that.
But it's all related because it's a mindset shift of all of this. Is like, do you want to if you don't want to come out on top in this scramble, you will get fucked. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, like user researchers are right now
Yes,
because they're
exactly.
the
Exactly.
furthest tied.
And a huge part of that is because they're so difficult. They're such difficult people that nobody wants to work with them because they just blow up scope all the time. They act like they're smarter than everybody. And everyone's just like, all right, like I literally can't work with you. This is not workable. So I guess we're going to go around you.
Let me give a more specific example because I I think this is an issue with shareholder primacy, right? Because with shareholders, you're looking at it from a quarterly
But
standpoint.
let's actually forget about that because the reality is nobody inside the company gives a fuck other than I mean even the CEO doesn't give a shit. They're out to for everyone's out for themselves. So forget about that part. Like it's actually really the the smarter move is to learn how to frame everything you do in terms of what's in it for the other person, that you're working with. Meaning, is it going to help them get promoted? Is it going to help them, go home earlier? Is it
Yeah.
going to help them hit their bonus or whatever it is, or have more clout, whatever? Like that's what people care about. They don't give a fuck about. Nobody really cares how much money the company makes, other than to the extent it affects like their RSUs.
I think, okay, my issue with a lot of PMs I work with was that they were compensated and evaluated based on their ability to adhere to the CEO or like C levels
Yep.
asks, right?
Yep.
So it's not about are we building good products or when we talk about, let's find out what are they in it for. Maybe it's the money, their career, etc. And that's tied to what the CEO tells them to build.
Yep.
And they become this wall because they're now telling you we need to build this, and this is with the backing of the CEO. And as a designer, you're often saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like it's not going to work out. But if I fight against you, I'm not going to win because you have
Right.
way more power behind you. But if I were to do what you tell me to do, it's not really good for me as a designer. But it's
Well, I would figure out. I mean, this is exactly why. So when I started working at Abercrombie, I took a design job there, knowing I did not want to be a designer there, but I wanted to have that company on my resume because I needed a big name company on my resume, and I played the game long enough to move into a marketing role, which to my knowledge, I'm the only person that's ever done that. I'm moving from design to marketing. Certainly, I mean, I was at that time. I mean, and that's, you got to find a way to like come out on top in the scramble. That's just what it is, So everything you're saying is totally true. But is that going to change? No. So find a way to become the person who, has more clout than the PM.
so
Just like Johnny Ive did. That's what he did. He outmaneuvered everyone, so he was reporting straight to Steve. That's how he was able to do, his work. And same thing, at lots of other companies. It's like, so like there was the CMO at Procter and Gamble is the one that sort of made them a design oriented company. So align yourself with her. Like I mean, it's a horse trading game if you want to stay inside that environment. And that all comes back to the AI thing. Is like some people are going to use these tools, right? And that ship has sailed. The genie is out of the bottle. So do you want to be on the right side of that or not? Like you can voice these concerns all you want and they might be valid, but so what, you know?
true, true. But I think one thing that is really interesting you just brought up is you moved from design to marketing,
Yep.
and this happened many years ago.
Yep.
So back then, maybe it's not the most logical thing for many designers, but it feels like right now it's becoming more and more so. Like there's this, I would say marketing is bleeding into design because of
Sure.
AI for
Hmm.
some reason. I'm not really sure why, but in lots of the language and the talking points, people are talking about distribution
Yep.
for founders and for designers. And they're talking about getting it into the hands of the users as quickly as
Hmm.
possible. So there's all this like marketing speak that's happening right now. Like, why do you think that is?
Well, it's not, the tools are not actually capable of this yet, but let's pretend that they are because people think they are. Let's pretend that you can create a pretty good clone of any product, in an afternoon or a weekend with one of these AI builders.
Sure.
Not quite true, but let's pretend that you can. In that world, what is the alpha? It is distribution and brand, because if you build something cool, someone else will just screenshot it and put it into cursor and be like, "Make me one of these." And if that's not true now, it will be true-ish or fairly true in the near future. So that's the reason why. And as a like I still identify as a designer, even though that hasn't like been my title for a long time, because my job at the end of the day is like, what is the end state that I want to get to, and how do we get there? Like, I'm not tied to like pushing pixels. Like again, I design everything from like t-shirts to skateboard graphics to Swiffers to, our React app. I don't really care what I am working on. I just can't. So I'm not tied to like, I don't care about that. I just want to achieve the end result, which to me, that's design. Like define the goal and then figure out the path to get there. So what we're seeing is that the variable there is shifting more towards just distribution and brand of like, it's not really a question anymore of like, can we design and build this thing? It's a question of how can we get people to actually use it and pay us for it?
So distribution, I feel like is kind of a newish term that's being thrown around a lot, and it's not really well defined. Like I have my own idea of what
Mm-hmm.
distribution is. Like, what's yours?
Well, I mean, I've also done a lot of kind of media work for a long time where that's like distribution is like the number, like when there's a thing called the Audit Bureau of Circulation for every magazine that like, if you want to know how many copies People magazine prints every month, the circulation or distribution would be like the number. So like I've thought about in that term for a long time. Distribution is like, how do you get it into the hands of people? You know, you could call it go to market, call it whatever you want. It's like, how do you sell the thing? And how do you make, you know, it's the AIDA funnel, you know, awareness, intent, whatever the D is, I don't remember. um, but, you know, make people aware of it, get them to like it, and get them to stick around and pay you for it. So that's my definition of it.
Got it. I see. How would you turn that into the work that we do as product designers?
Well, there's sort of, you know, fundamentally, it's a little bit more nuanced, but fundamentally, you know, you're going to be either product driven or sales driven, and so that's going to sort of take you into two different paths. Like if it's sales driven, like say, you know, most enterprise software people don't sign up for, you know, whatever Oracle's ERP software, you know, put on a credit card, right? That's like a whatever 6 month sales cycle and blah 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 blah, you know, compared to like Notion or whatever, where you go to the website, you download it, App Store, or whatever. So you know, I think I have a little bit of a different sort of mindset than a lot of people do. I am indifferent to what I do. My goal is just to, well, all I want to do is hit the goal. So as a product designer, I'd be like, all right, well, so we've got this, we shipped this thing to the App Store. Now what? Now here's the problem I'm getting to before is like, in most companies, you as a designer, like, you can't really do more than that. Like, you have to stay in
Yeah.
your lane, which sucks. Like, I hate that. Um, so that's sort of a political challenge of like, you know, at any given company, how do you become more integrated in either the marketing or sales process? And to do that, first of all, you got to play ball, and like, you can't tell salespeople that like revenue isn't important, because they'd be like, fuck you, I get a commission. Like, if you're coming into this with the point of view that like revenue isn't the number one thing, then we have nothing to talk about. So that's sort of where it all comes back to this sort of, you know, I would call it like a collaborative mindset is what is the key to all of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I want to tie into Alex Grigori's question. It's like, how much should designers think about being at the top of the product pile versus supporting the top of the executive pile? Seeing design as a vehicle for delivering stakeholder outcomes versus PM outcomes.
I mean, a PM would be a stakeholder, I would think.
I guess would be the difference between executives versus PMs because, as a
Yeah.
designer, you typically work really closely with the PM
Yeah.
and
Well,
usually you never
let's be
talk.
real. At every company, there is one product manager. It's the CEO. At every company, there is one creative director. It's the CEO. That's how it is.
Yeah,
Sucks, but that's just reality.
that is true. So,
Like, the PMs don't, at 99% of companies, like, PMs feel exactly the same way as designers. They're like, I don't do any real strategic work. All I do is manage a backlog and like do whatever the VP tells me to do, and the VP does whatever the CEO tells them to do. Like, everyone feels this way. They all feel like they're just doing like executional shit work, and they're not wrong. And like, I think you've talked about this before, is like, a lot of people, a lot of the sort of design influencer people or design thought leaders or whatever sell designers a bill of goods on a version of the job that really doesn't exist, or at least doesn't exist for most people. And it's the same thing for product. Like, you know, there's people like Marty Kagan, who is awesome, and I think he's really smart, and I like his work, but the way he describes PM as a job does not resemble the way it's done at 90% of companies. Like, at
yeah,
90% of companies, you are essentially a backlog manager, you know, and like, that's reality. Like, the idea that, like, at Amazon, they used to tell, you know, PMs like, you're the CEO of the product. Bullshit. You're not the CEO of the product. Like, you're gonna do whatever the fuck they tell you to do in OP1. You know, that's reality. If they say like build this, you're gonna build it. And it's the same thing for design. So I think a lot of this is just like managing our own. And I used to be so mad about all the stuff you're talking about, like 20 years ago. I was so mad about all this shit. I was furious about it. It pissed me off like all day, every day. And I just realized it's not reality. Like, I had this idea in my head of a version of the job that does not exist unless you were like the top 1% of the top 1%. And I bet even those people would tell you they don't feel that way.
but I am the top 1% of the 1%.
Me too.
Okay. I feel like every
But
designer believes that,
yeah, I mean,
actually.
and I actually do have that version of that job now, but it's because I took a lot of risk that I'm a partner in this company and we're a small company, so like I don't have a lot of resources. Like our product team is two people, but we do whatever the fuck we want. Like if I'm like, we should just stop doing this. This is dumb, right? And he'll be like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. Cool, let's just drop it and do something else instead. Then we just do it.
Hmm.
And it's not, we're not haphazard about it. I mean, it's like we're deliberate, but we actually do have, and if he thinks something is dumb and like, hey, actually, I don't really like the way you design this component, it should work this way. I'm like, cool, you're right. Let's do it that way. Like that's a very rare version of the job, but it took me a long time to get here. And there's a lot of trade-offs that come with it. But if you want to work at a big company and have like the relative job security and the paycheck that comes along with that, like this idea of like, you know, as you said, like, but I'm the 1%. It's like you got to let go of that. That's just not. You're gonna be just frustrated with life if you think that's reality. It's not.
Nobody wants to be average. That's what you're wrong. I mean,
Then
people
don't
would.
be. You know, but that's hard too. I mean, if you actually, which I'm sure you do, if you actually know anybody that's truly like world class at what they do, that's not easy. You know, I mean, the CEO
No.
of Creative Live, who, you know, is super, super, super accomplished. He was probably one of the top 10 commercial photographers in the world in the 2000s. And, you know, then he raised 60 million bucks for us and stuff. He used to travel 250 days a year.
Wow.
Like, I would literally die, but he's just wired that way. And before that, he was like on the fucking junior Olympic development team for soccer and shit. And I mean, he's just that guy that he just wins at fucking everything. But he operates at a level of intensity that would make most people, including me, like fall apart. And I'm more intense than most people, and he's like 10 times more intense than I am.
Yeah, it's like that story about Travis Kalanick, where he just destroys people at Wii Sports. And everybody knows
Totally.
that. He's like the
Totally.
top one or two in the world for Wii Sports. And he's also
Right.
CEO of ex-CEO of Uber, and you're just like, what? That makes totally different skill sets. But
Yeah. I mean, so I think a lot of this is like, I know that I'm not being very tactical here, but this is not really a tactical problem. It's not about like how do we integrate Lovable into our workflow. That's whatever. That's relatively easy. We're all smart. We can figure that out. It's more a question of like what is the mindset that you bring into this such that you end up in a place where you are happy is the actual question here. You know, and a lot of that is like what hills do you want to die on? Like, do you want to be the person that's like insisting that design should be this? And well, okay, if you have the leverage to do that, then go for it. Otherwise, someone's just going to walk all over you. You know, and I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to be defeatist or give people a bitter pill that they don't want to swallow, but it's just reality. Like, unless you have leverage, people are going to walk all over you. And you just have to be realistic about that.
I think it was years ago when, sorry, excuse me. I think it was like years ago when people used to, or designers used to talk more about like how do you be happy at
Yeah.
work. And I think right now our expectations have been reset by mass layoffs and just like how tough the market is. And mostly just trying to survive. It's not even
Hmm.
about where do I find, my place to do the best work
I
possible.
mean, a lot of this, let's be honest, a lot of this is ego. Is a lot of people, not just designers, but like I would say designers probably a little bit more than most, but
Yeah, I
they
agree.
want to feel important. They want to have like status and feel like they're important. And that's, you know, that's 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 okay, but you know, arguably, but I'd say in life in general, the more you can let go of ego, the happier you will be. You know, because like fighting for status, like that's not a great way to live, you know? And like a lot of designers I think probably don't want to admit that's what they're doing, but that's what it is. Like a lot of them are, I was for sure. Like I was mad because I felt like I wasn't as important as I deserved to be, you know?
So, okay, so let's say let's say I'm a designer and I'm letting go of my ego
Yep.
and I'm now approaching this new field where AI is being rapidly adopted and there are these uncertainties
Yep.
about my career, my job going forward. And then again, I'm casting aside my ego. Like, how should I
Yep.
be approaching this differently
Well,
versus somebody?
let's say there's 50 designers in your org. 40 of them are digging their feet, digging in their heels and saying AI sucks, we shouldn't use it, rah rah rah. 10 of them are like, actually this stuff's cool, like let's work together and figure out how we should do it. Which group do you think you should be in?
I have two opinions on this. I would say, on one hand, I really do think that designers should be thinking about unionization, and this is the reason why you have, Hollywood writers have been able to successfully push back
Well,
using
then
AI for scripts. And sorry, are you muted? Can you hear me? I can't hear you for some reason.
oh,
Maybe it's me.
uh,
No, I can hear you now.
okay. Sorry, what were you saying about unionizing?
Yeah, unionizing, like
Yeah, go for it.
it's
Do it.
worked.
Do it. Get leverage. I mean, that's the name of the game. Like, get leverage. If unions say like, I kind of doubt that that will work, but go for it. If like, do whatever you can to get leverage. That's what you should do. Whether that means like playing, so you can play nice and sort of make friends with the right stakeholders, which is the path I would probably recommend. Or you can play hardball and do stuff like unionize. That can work too, but I would not sit around idly on the sidelines and just sort of hope things work out for you because
Right.
that's unwise.
So, where do you think design is headed? Like, if you were to give a bold prediction, say 2 or 3 years from now, when it comes to product and UX designers, like,
Yeah,
what's the job market like? What's the structure like? What is the just overall environment?
I think that there is there's a role, whether it will be called designer or not, I don't know, but there is a role that we'll call it. Some I've heard, maybe it was Trevor, I don't know, somebody like referred to it as like builder, which I think is sort of the right way to think about it. There's going to be a role that figures out what features, products in general, and features we should be building, and and sort of roughly scopes those out in some sort of prototype form. Whether that will be PMs who can do some design or designers who can do some PMing or a new type of person, I don't know, but I think that's the role where designers like that's the closest thing to like a product design type of role I think in the future. People placing pixels by hand, there's probably going to be like somebody that a small number of people that like maintain the build and design the design system or something like that. But I don't know that like that doesn't sound like a fun job to me. That's like the equivalent of what back in the day they would call like a production artist, which is you would design the, let's say you're designing a magazine spread, you would design it in Illustrator or whatever, hand it to them, and they would you know get it to a place where it could be handed off to the printer, or like in the apparel world they're called tech designers. So like when I was a graphic designer, I would design the t-shirt graphic in Illustrator, but then I would give it to the tech designer and they would figure out all the shit that the factory needs to know about it. I'll call that the janitor. And I don't mean any disrespect to those people, but for the people who are listening to this, I don't think that's the place you want to be. If you let yourself, you will drift there. So the future of it, I think, is this sort of hybrid role of someone who is using AI tools to ideate on what we should make and then roughly scope out what it is. And then how it gets actually built, I think is probably going to be mostly AI. I think even if like from an engineering perspective, like if you talk to a lot of engineers now, like a lot of them are like using AI to write 80 or 90% of their code. And so I think that job, a lot of it is going to be about writing tests more so than it will be actually writing code. So you just write the test and then let AI write against that. And I don't really give a shit how it does it. As long as it passes all the tests, then cool. Then we ship it.
I feel
So I don't
like
know if that
there's
answers your question.
Yeah, it does, but it also raises more questions because it feels like the way we've constructed our teams in the last few decades is this idea, well, it's like some kind of compartmentalization to make hiring and working a little bit easier. Like
Hmm.
you have job families, you can say, this is the PM, this is a
Hmm.
designer, here's the line. If we
Well, I
hire
think
PM,
PMs are going to be fucked too because like if you're just a PM and all you can do is like write PRDs and shit like that, like I mean AI can already do that pretty well. Like if you're just a Jira jockey, that's a low value job in the near future, you know.
right?
So like I think PMs are going to need to be able to build. Like if they can't do some level of like building, if all you have is an opinion and you manage calendars, it's like, I'm not going to pay you 200 grand for that.
So everyone's building. Like I think we're in agreement with
Yep.
that. Like everyone now has the ability to build to a certain extent, and that's going to get better and better and more efficient, effective, etc. I think the part where I struggle to mentally understand what's going to happen is that previously we demarcated people's skill set, experiences, etc., and responsibilities so that we can more easily hire them, more easily
Right, right, right,
understand where they
right.
come from and how to get people to work together, right? Like you do this, I do this. And every project has one PM, one designer, 6 to 10 developers, etc.
Yep.
And that's like that golden ratio or, three-legged stool, etc.
Yep.
And it gets really confusing though if you have like three
Hmm.
PMs working on a single project together, right? Or you have three designers working on one feature together. If there's no clear, usually it's like a super senior one who's like
Hmm.
overseeing the others. It's rare to see like three equal designers working together at the same time. And I feel like when you talk about this like Uber builder, that's where it gets really confusing. Like, how do you separate things? Because do you just have one builder for each feature?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I think we don't know yet. Um, yeah, I don't know. Um, I don't know. That's a good question. The way I would do things, my point of view on design management is that I don't think designers need managers. I think they need maybe a little bit, but they mostly just need leaders. I think if you hire the right people, designers are like very intrinsically motivated, meaning that like the reason they come to work every day and like what they want to do is they want to do their best work. And I don't need to tell them what to do. My job is to set them up for success and get the fuck out of their way. And that's the way, this is like the way, it's hard to do this at a very large company. But even then, like at Abercrombie, we had the best designers I've ever worked with by far. Everyone, I was the worst, not the very worst, but I was definitely in the bottom 10%. Like it was very humbling. I was like, holy fuck. Everybody here is so, I thought I was pretty good. I was like, Jesus Christ, everybody here is good. I kind of suck. Those people did not need anybody to like direct them and shit. Like it was so dumb how like wasted their skill was. So the way I would suggest, so how people will actually do this in big companies, I don't know. The way I would suggest it is to create a culture of like actual collaboration and and when it comes to like promotions and stuff like that, I think you have to be very careful, like you said, of what are the incentives. Like, don't incentivize people to manage for optics. Like, incentivize people to ship things that are successful. And I think if we all understand, like, I would measure the team, probably like measure the team as a whole. I think of like you guys decide for yourselves like who does what and like because it's kind of different on every team of like I would just say you guys decide for yourselves like who does what. Like your job is just to ship and I don't really care how you do it, you know? And I understand that's a little bit chaotic, but I think the nature of these tools, so if the fundamental shift of AI is thinking probabilistically rather than deterministically, I think that's also true of like the process of using them too. Is like when I press the button in Lovable, I don't know what's going to happen, you know. In Figma I do because it's deterministic. Like I know if I set up, you know, the component blah blah blah, when I drag it here and press this, it's the following thing is going to happen. AI is probabilistic, not deterministic, and so like anybody, it's like RNG, like anybody could be the one that happened to type the magic words into the prompt that came up with a really cool feature that is the right thing for the business. And I think it would be stupid to create a process where like you basically snuff that out. You know what I mean? It's like If
Yeah.
if you draw the RNG that has the cool idea because of whatever you put into it, cool, then let's run with it. So I don't know how we're going to do it, but I think the right way to do it is to like break down all these barriers and incentivize people to be collaborative rather than staking out their territory because they think it's going to make them look better for the sake of a promotion.
That's so much easier said than done.
Yes,
Because
for
it's
sure.
like
For sure.
we can't
For
e-
sure.
we cannot get senior leadership or the PM side oftentimes to look at success in terms of how something does on the market versus how much work did we do? Did we how many products
Yes.
did we ship? How many features did we ship?
Yep. Yep.
And it's just so hard because
But that
like how do
starts from
you
the top. And so that's the other thing is like it sucks is like you as the designer or IC or even like a design manager, like all this shit starts at the top. You don't set corporate culture. This founder slash CEO does, you know? And so you don't get to choose, unfortunately. Like Amazon definitely like values results. Like I would say they have like probably of all the big companies I'm familiar with, they have the least bullshit in terms of like their culture. Obviously, any company does. Like I would say it's kind of chaotic, but there's a lot less bullshit sort of than there are at other companies I'm familiar with. And that's because it started with, with Bezos, in the beginning of like this is how we do things, this is what we care about. Like their leadership principles, they actually really do operate by those. Like be right a
yeah.
lot, stuff like that. So it's really this is not a question for designers to decide, unfortunately. Back I used to do printing for years, like before I had a real job. And we used to say ours is not to question why, ours is just to print and sigh. So this is a question for like CEOs really is like what is the culture you like Satya Nadella did a fucking amazing job of changing Microsoft culture. Like I would say he's probably of any like big company, he's probably the most like transformative person who's not a founder that took a company that was very sort of not in a good place and transformed the culture and transformed the business outcomes. And like that's what you need to do in this new world is like set a culture where your people can actually use these tools to do their best work. And that means breaking down a lot of these like stupid silos that have existed before. Is that easy to do? Absolutely not. But as the CEO, I would say I don't care if it's easy to do. Like figure it out. That's your job.
You didn't like the Steve Ballmer era?
Yeah, exactly. It
Developer,
was
developer, developer.
yeah. And then Satya came in and, like one of the first big things he did was shipping Office for iPad, which, they always said they weren't going to do. And they reorged so that Windows was no longer, its own division. It was like under, I think like Office. Again, sent a big signal like, hey guys, we're not here to like protect Windows anymore as like our castle. We're here to like deliver products that people use, and Windows is one of those, but like it's not our whole company anymore. So like those kind of bold decisions are the ones you need to make, and sort of what those look like on a org chart level for any given company I would have to like think about a little bit, but maybe it's something like I mean, to the designers, I'd say, hey, you guys keep saying that you want to sort of be involved at the more strategic level. Like, so I'm going to give you the chance to do it. And just so you know, here's the expectations. Like, this is what we're here to do. And, you have the chance to prove to the org that you guys can solve, these problems. So let's try
Yeah.
it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you talk quite a bit about your background, your history. You've done printing, you've done all these different
Yeah.
things over many, many years. And it feels like AI is one of those bigger technological shifts
Yeah.
than maybe something as big as the internet. Like I would say the internet's the
Probably.
biggest one, right? And
Yeah.
like
Yeah, for
going
sure.
digital and everything.
Yeah.
And AI is like right now still way under that, but it has potential more
So it's
so
like
than
comparable to like mobile, probably.
yeah. I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Definitely more than blockchain and VR for sure so
What?
far.
What are you talking about? Blockchain changed everything. I can't go 5 minutes without using my Web3 VR devices.
Yes, exactly. So I think one helpful way of looking at what's happening is like from a historical context. So what's an analogy that you think this is equivalent to when it comes to how it's going to change how designers work, our environment, job market, etc.
Well, I remember when, sort of call it like late 90s, early 2000s, when graphic designer was still, I would say the equivalent of what product designer has been for the past, 15 years or something like that. And they started to feel a whole lot of pressure to have to understand the internet. And they're like, well, I didn't go to school for this. Like, what is, like, I shouldn't have to do this, rah, 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 to learn HTML and CSS and stuff like that. And it's really kind of the same conversation. It's like, well, I mean, I can't force you to do anything, but it's like pretty obvious that this is where the wind is blowing. So if you want to be, is your job to operate Photoshop, or is your job to, what I there's a guy named Helen Curtis who wrote a book years ago. I think is a very good. He I've just found out he died sadly. But he had a book called Making the Invisible Visible, which to me is like a very good definition of design. So is your job to operate Photoshop and Quark Express, or is your job to make the invisible visible? I would say it's the second one, but the people who decided that they were Photoshop operators, well, they just didn't go well for them. Same thing, with every one of these big technological shifts. I mean, how many people like it's the same thing, it's just like the world has changed and you can either choose to be part of it or not. So that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's super depressing to me in many ways for some
It doesn't
reason.
like it doesn't bother me. I don't give a shit. Like I'm not married to any tool or process or whatever. Like I like the challenge of like solving complex nonlinear problems. I really don't care. Like I mean, I spent the last 2 days like building a data pipeline from we have like 100,000 minutes of like video content, for our product and our members app. So I spent the last few days like myself personally like building this data pipeline to take those transcripts and turn those into like SEO blog articles. And I just
Oh,
finished doing that. Like, so I don't care whether I'm like building a data pipeline or in Figma or whatever else or making influencer deals. It's all the same thing to me. Is like my goal is to like create this app and get people to use it. How I get there, I don't care.
oh, I don't mean like I find it depressing that the way we work is going to be different. Like I think that's reality, right? Like every segment of time, things will change. Like you're
Yeah.
going to go from
Well,
the
what's
printing
depressing about
press.
it?
I think it's depressing because employers are leveraging this in ways that are not great for workers.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
And
yeah. But that's always they're always going to. If it's not this, it's going to be something like they're not your fucking friends. Like it
they're
is a power struggle where their goal is to extract as much value from you for the smallest amount of money, and your goal is to get the most amount of money for the least amount of work that you can do. So find a way to win, you know?
I agree. I just think that this paradigm shift has what's different about this paradigm shift versus other ones is that this one gives so much more control or leverage to employers than previous ones. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like correct me if I'm wrong. Because I feel
Well,
like in other
there's
ones,
there's a version. Yes, there's a but all these things. It's like these stories are only true if we let them be true. Like if what if I understand the power? What if I understand how to use these tools better than the employer does? Then I'm like, no, you're like. So for example, my wife worked at AWS, and she worked with the guy who created Java. I don't know how much they paid him, but I'm sure it was an astonishing amount of money. He came into the office like a couple times a month, lived in another state, and when he was there, he sort of did what he wanted. And because he has the leverage of like, he's the motherfucker that created Java and he invented virtualization. So that's sort of the extreme version. So my point being is like he plays by his own rules because he's fucking James Gosling. Now we can't all necessarily be that, but if I understand these tools way better than the employer does, then I'd be like, you're going to hire me to tell you how to use these, and you're going to pay me this much, and here's going to be my job because you need me more than I need you.
Yeah, but sorry, I know we're over time,
No, I'm
right?
good.
Yeah,
Is
but
that
we talk.
easy? No, but it's just like
No,
it's just like it depends how much I will never like I'm like I'm an intense person. Like I will never ever 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 admit defeat ever no matter what. It will never fucking happen. Ever. And like I think that's just kind of the attitude you got to have.
you're not average. Like
No.
that much is clear, right? And I think the contradiction that I'm sensing, or correct me if I'm wrong, is that we need to. I think you and I both agree that it's okay to be average, right? Like,
Yeah, and I'm not judging anyone. Like I'm trying to help. Like I feel bad. I get it. I feel it sucks. Like it sucks. It does. But you just it's pointless to sort of dwell on that. It's like there is nobody is going to come along and rescue you. You have to find your own path here. And it doesn't really matter. Like it's just reality, and I'm not criticizing. I'm not like I don't mean to be harsh. It's just like you just got to understand it just is what it is and you cannot admit defeat.
I I agree with you in that, like, that's the approach. That's the only approach we can
It's the only
logically make,
one.
right? You can't just give up. You can't just be
Yeah.
like, oh, this is horrible. I'm not gonna partake in this because this is where we're moving. Unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. But
Yeah, it
I
just is
think
what it is.
I think my issue is that, look, I feel like I'm gonna be okay-ish, most likely, in terms
Dude,
of
you'll
being
be
able to.
great. You can be as
And
great as you want. You have an audience of super high value people that like very much respect your opinion. Like the quality of your audience is insane. Like
but no, no. What I'm trying to say is like the thing is that for the average designer,
yeah.
this is the bad thing, right? And no matter what, the category of average designer stays the same. Like
Yes.
the number of average designers stay the same. Like from a statistical standpoint, that is
Yes. It's
so.
definitionally true. Yes.
Yeah, everyone can work their asses off and just be like, I'm gonna be the best. And no matter what, it's just gonna be average. It's kind of like the Olympics, like 100-meter dash, over the years from like 1900s to now. It's just,
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like the average sprinter now would be a world record holder like 100 years
Totally. Yeah.
ago,
Or like
right?
NFL linemen now, like the average is like 300 pounds and it was like 185 like in 1990 or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue because I feel like with AI, what it does is now you're forced to work harder to try. You have to do more in order to survive or to be the best. And we only have so many hours during the day, and I think that's the depressing part. There's nothing to be done about that. Okay.
I mean, like my wife's family had to fucking steal a boat to leave Vietnam because they were in a communist prison camp and they were gonna fucking die if they didn't. Like, I guarantee you, they didn't want to leave their country. I guarantee you, my father-in-law didn't want to fucking kill other Vietnamese people in the war, but he had to. I mean, you know, that's just how it is. Like I think about these things. Like I have a lot of family members and stuff that went to prison and stuff too. So like my range of like outcomes is not like, oh, I don't really like my job.
Yeah.
Like my range of outcomes is like I might fucking die like in fucked up circumstances. And like I actually think that's like a healthy thing to consider is that like it's not that bad. If like okay, so the PM has more clout than you, like okay, life goes on. You know what I mean? Like okay, it's like these things are all it all goes back to the mindset thing of like you decide, all of us decide what our future is. Obviously, like you get cancer, you get struck by lightning, you can't control that, but like broadly speaking, like you have this is all a choice. You can decide what you want this to be for yourself, and telling yourself that you're fucked and that it's going to be miserable and it's bad and blah blah blah, like what do you gain from that? Or do you go, okay, well, this is how it is. Like what is the path? Like what do I want my life to be like to be happy, and how do I get there? I think is a healthier point of view. And that probably means like, okay, well, I should probably learn how to use these tools and I should probably make sure that, I'm on the right side of this. And like, that doesn't really seem like that big of a deal to me.
I there's this book on my list called Blood in the Machines by Brian Merchant. I
Hmm.
think, yeah. And I think we should both read that book.
What's the premise?
The premise, oh God, he wrote a really interesting article on Substack about how employers are leveraging AI to reduce the workforce. Not
Well,
because,
if they do this, this is really stupid. What you should do, let's say AI at 10x is the productivity of your people. I don't know if that's the right number, but let's say it does. If you choose to reduce headcount because of that, that is an incredibly stupid decision rather than keeping your headcount what it is, or maybe reallocating things, but increasing the like taking on projects that are more complex and ambitious than you could do before. Because if you're the idiot that chooses to reduce headcount, well, then there's going to be someone else that doesn't, and their product is going to be 10 times better than yours, and you're going to fucking go out of business.
yeah, no,
So if people are, if any company that does this deserves to go out of business, that's an incredibly dumb way to handle this.
what his point was that AI, if it does improve productivity, and you're right, like if it does improve productivity, there's no point in laying people off. Just double
It's
down,
stupid. Yeah.
work harder, and basically create more value.
Yeah.
You're more likely to win. What he's saying is that companies are using this as an excuse to get rid of workers currently
Yeah, of course.
because
But if it's not this, it's going to be like tariffs or blah, blah, blah. They're not your fucking friends. Yes, of course they're going to throw you under the bus. Of course.
yes,
Like, and by the way, you should do the same to them. It's just
I
business,
agree.
you know?
It is business, and
It's just business. Like, they're not your fucking, like, being loyal to any company is a fucking sucker move. Like, do not ever give them your loyalty for one fucking second because they're not your friends and guarantee you they will throw you under the bus the moment they think it's beneficial, and you should do the same to them. No hard feelings. Like, I'm not telling people to be adversarial, but it's just
no,
that's just
I
how it is, you know?
100% agree. The layoffs have very much proven that,
You
but
could be like, this just happened to a friend of mine. Glowing performance review, and then like 10 days later laid off. Like, just lie to your fucking face, you know?
yeah, everyone's a number. But I think the book is about the Industrial Revolution. I think there
Hmm.
was a group of people called the Luddites who
Yeah,
were
yeah,
going
yeah.
around destroying the machines, and
Right.
they're just, very much resistant to that.
Yep.
And I think he's drawing the parallel with what's happening with AI right now. And anyway, I just think that's like, I gotta read it, so I'm not
Yeah, I mean,
misrepresenting it.
there's a classic example of this is when ATM machines came out in like the early 80s. All the bank tellers hated them because they said it was gonna like get rid of like bank tellers. Well, it's a very famous example is you can look up the chart. Actually, teller jobs increased because they just reallocated those people instead of like processing transactions and handing out cash. They made them, basically like relationship managers. So, I mean, elevator operator used to be a job. It's not anymore. This happens with like every technological shift. And I don't mean to like dismiss the concerns of the people in the short term who get displaced because that's very real. But what are you going to do? I mean, I just don't think pushing against the river is a viable strategy, you know?
Yeah, you're not gonna hold back the flood at this point.
Yeah. So I would just sort of embrace it and, and the macro thing here is like the human brain is an optimization machine, and it is like ingrained in us to resist and fear change, because our brain is designed to like keep us safe. And if the status quo means that I'm safe, then my brain would prefer that. So you're sort of like, you're fighting your brain to some extent, but just don't get attached to don't get too attached to the status quo because it's an illusion. Like the idea that like it's impossible for things to stay the same for all kinds of reasons. So I think just go with the flow, ride the wave, and stay calm, be zen, and just like come out on top in the scramble. But don't don't spend time, on the woe is me kind of thing and focusing on the negative and stuff because it's just really, it's, you don't, there's no upside for you in that, just like accept that it is the way it is. Like if it's raining out today, are you going to like sit around all day, like stomping your feet and being mad that it's raining? You're like, oh, well, it's raining. Okay. I guess I'm not going to go play soccer today. What should we do instead? Like we get to choose, you don't get to choose the world around you, but you do get to choose how you react to it. And I think learning how to manage our own feelings around this stuff is actually the harder part than sort of managing the mechanics of it.
I appreciate that.
Easier said
Man.
than done, of course.
Yeah, that's what therapy is for.
Yes, and I've spent more time on this exact thing than anything I've spent like hour by hour conscious effort on this like every day since I was about 15. Like I've spent more time on this than anything else in my entire life because it's fucking hard, but I guarantee you it's worth it. And like designers as a whole, not the least mentally ill group of people, let's put it that way. And I'm not saying that like as an attack or something. It's just like, and I would say almost like the more talented you are, sort of the more kind of emotionally, I don't want to say unstable, but like the more there's probably some stuff going on in general. So this is actually a really big part of the job of like learning how to manage your own psychology is harder than like you're going to get better as a designer like because it's fun. You like that part. Like that's getting better is not the hard part. It's like staying happy is the hard part.
Yeah. I'm not gonna think too hard about that right this second, but
Yeah.
that
But
this
that
is
is the heading of all of this is like just remember you get to choose how you feel. I know like people don't like to hear that, but you do. You get to choose how you feel.
yes. This is this is giving me flashbacks to my therapy session right now. I'm pretty sure my therapist said this exact phrase word for word for a while,
Well,
repeatedly.
I've spent lots and lots of time and money on therapists and psychiatrists and stuff, and I've fortunately learned a few things from it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been a fascinating talk. I think we went like through multiple really interesting topics, and I really
Yeah, thanks
appreciate,
for having me.
yeah, I appreciate your taking the time. And we're way over time, and that's and people who stayed and listened. I hope you all enjoyed it to a certain extent, and yeah, I hope we motivated you to just try out these AI tools and deal with the oncoming changes, whatever they
Just
may
use
be.
discount code Finn when you sign up.
Ah, yeah. But do you have a plug of anything before we sign off?
If any, you just follow me on, send me a connection request on
Oh
LinkedIn.
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's the URL here. So if you want to be friends, then add me on LinkedIn and we're friends.
Yeah, Finn McKenty. Please add him. Really great content, and I hope to, chat with you again real soon.
Cool. Take care.
All right, take care. Thanks so much.